Something terrible happened to Kraven while he was hunting. He suddenly saw a male lion appear before him and knew he was in big trouble. He quickly shielded his younger brother behind him. Facing such a massive beast, he knew that even firing a shot wouldn't be enough to take it down. Kraven did something unexpected. At the critical moment, he put down his weapon, trying to show the Lion King that he meant no harm. Surprisingly, the fierce expression of the lion gradually softened, but suddenly, a gunshot broke the balance. The shooter was none other than Kraven's father. However, his strategy backfired. The Lion King roared and charged at Kraven, its sharp teeth piercing through him. His father fired several shots in an attempt to stop the lion, but it was no use. The lion carried Kraven away, and his father knew there was no chance his son would survive. But fate had other plans. The lion's blood seeped into Kraven's wounds, opening a mysterious door and causing an incredible reaction between their genes. The Lion King seemed to sense this change and dropped its prey before leaving. Kraven miraculously survived, but his father was not happy about his son's resurrection. As a legendary figure in society, he could not tolerate his son showing weakness. He wanted his son to have the ferocity of a wolf and reminded him of the law of the jungle. His father hoped that Kraven would take over his business one day, but this expectation caused Kraven great pain and conflict. Facing his ruthless father, Kraven dared not resist, but when he saw the Lion King's taxidermy, he could no longer contain his anger. Kraven locked himself in his room and vowed never to become a cold-blooded monster like his father. Not long ago, his mother had committed suicide due to long-term domestic abuse. Filled with anger and disappointment, he decided to leave home forever. Before leaving, he took out a mysterious card that seemed to hold great significance for him. As he carefully climbed onto the roof, the tiles suddenly cracked beneath him. Expecting to fall heavily to the ground, he was surprised to find himself landing lightly. Kraven couldn't believe what had happened, but he had no time to dwell on it. He made his way to his mother's hometown, a vast grassland in the Russian Far East. As he immersed himself in the beauty of nature, a terrible sound suddenly echoed through the air. Kraven looked back in terror to see a cloud of dust on the horizon. A large herd of wild buffalo was charging towards him at an incredible speed. With no place to hide on the open grassland, he could only cover his ears and leave his fate to the heavens. Strangely, the herd did not trample over him but chose to go around him on both sides. It was only then that he realized the leader of the herd was protecting him with its body until all the buffalo had passed. Only then did the Buffalo King leave peacefully. At that moment, Kraven realized that he not only had the ability to communicate with wild beasts, but also possessed extraordinary physical abilities. With just a slight effort, he could throw the spear 100 meters. His speed was comparable to that of a cheetah, allowing him to catch up with a running stag in an instant. His explosive power was also terrifying, as he could leap high with just a light tap of his toes. His hearing had also become incredibly sharp, allowing him to clearly distinguish the number of water droplets in a gorge. Suddenly, a gunshot echoed through the valley. He quickly climbed up a towering tree, and with just a slight widening of his eyes, he saw two poachers a kilometer away. Kraven rushed over to try to stop them, but it was already too late. Seeing dozens of wild buffalo lying on the ground, a surge of anger welled up within him. Before Kraven could make a move, the poachers approached him and threatened him to leave. However, these words only provoked the beast within him. Kraven picked up a dagger from the ground and pounced on them like a wild beast. The two poachers were powerless against his iron fists. He looked at the other group of poachers in the distance and then at the fallen wild buffalo, making a firm decision in his heart. He would seek justice for these animals. 16 years passed, and Kraven had become a legend in the world of assassins. As a supervillain under Marvel, his name struck fear into the hearts of many. To pursue his targets, he even disguised himself as a prisoner and infiltrated a prison. However, as soon as he entered his cell, he realized that his cellmate was also a formidable figure. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Kraven proposed a bet, saying that he could leave in 3 days, and if he stayed a minute longer, he would be at the mercy of his cellmate. The cellmate was puzzled but still showed a meaningful smile. The next day, during recreation time, two reckless underlings approached, claiming that everything in the prison belonged to their boss and that they were going to teach the newcomer a lesson. Little did they know that they had kicked a steel plate. Kraven easily lifted the two men with just a slight exertion of force. Fortunately, the prison guards arrived in time to prevent a tragedy. However, he was taken to the room of the Black Boss, but Kraven was not worried. He knew very well the identity of the other party, because this was the purpose of his infiltration. Taking advantage of their relaxed vigilance, Kraven suddenly launched an attack. The two underlings did not have time to react before they lost their ability to resist. The Black Boss only realized the danger when it was too late, but the time left for him had already run out. The loud noise attracted the prison guards, but they were quickly thrown downstairs by Kraven. He moved like a gecko on the wall and then used his brute strength to tear open an escape route. The entire prison was filled with the piercing sound of alarms, but Kraven's speed was too fast, and the weapons were useless against him. Kraven escaped the prison in just 1 minute, but what awaited him was an unprecedented danger. A huge storm instantly engulfed him. In the blizzard with zero visibility, Kraven quickly lost his sense of direction. It was at this moment that he suddenly sensed a huge killing intent. An Arctic wolf appeared before him. However, when Kraven used his mental communication, the Wolf King immediately became docile. Under its leadership, Kraven successfully met up with his contact. Then he wiped off the tattoos on his body, and when the military forces arrived, they only found a corpse whose face had been eaten away by wolves. After completing his mission, Kraven returned to the grassland and found a group of poachers hunting wild buffalo. He had been waiting on the road that the convoy had to pass through. The poachers tried to bully him, but they overestimated their abilities. Kraven, like a wild beast, quickly disposed of a car full of enemies. The leader on the pickup truck panicked and tried to escape, but Kraven did not intend to let them go. He silently noted down the license plate number of their vehicle. The fleeing leader had just returned to the base to report to his boss when he was suddenly confronted with a crossbow bolt aimed at him. Kraven crossed the dead man's name off the list, then closed the door and left as if nothing had happened. He used his sense of smell to appear before a woman and took out the precious card he had kept for many years. Calypso only then realized that he was the Kraven from back then. It turned out that when Kraven was taken away by the Lion King, Calypso and her parents were also nearby on a trip. The card she held in her hand was given to her by her grandmother before they set off, a card that was said to bring her good luck. In addition, her grandmother also gave her a mysterious potion that had been passed down through the generations. Perhaps guided by fate, Calypso encountered Kraven, who had been taken away by the Lion King. The lion not only did not harm Kraven again, but also seemed to seek help when it saw Calypso. The girl took out the bottle of mysterious potion, and before leaving, she left the card with him, hoping to bring good luck to Kraven. However, despite the doctor's best efforts to save him, Kraven's injuries were too severe, and he was eventually pronounced dead. But just as the doctors were about to remove the equipment, he miraculously woke up. To unravel the mystery in his heart, he searched for 16 years and finally sensed the breath of his benefactor. Now, Calypso has become a renowned lawyer in London, but her mentor was killed while representing a client. Kraven said that he had already avenged her, and the killer was the guy from the prison. Calypso was half convinced and half doubtful. After returning home, she confirmed that the Black Boss had indeed died in prison. She found Kraven again, and although the guy deserved it, Calypso still did not agree with his methods, especially since Kraven did it to repay a debt of gratitude. However, the two of them did not know that the news of the Black Boss's death had quickly reached Alexi's ears. He used to be a minor figure under Kraven's father, but now he has become ambitious. To expand his power, he met with the Black Boss's former right-hand man, hoping that he would work for him in the future. However, the scholarly man in front of him, with his glasses, was hard to associate with the nickname Rhinoceros. To intimidate the other party, he disconnected the tube connected to his backpack, and his arm began to change. The underling quickly drew his gun and fired. Alexi fell to the ground but did not die. Instead, he stood up again, brushing off the dust. Then he unbuttoned his shirt and dug out the bullet from his already hardened skin. It was only after he reconnected the tube that his skin returned to normal. Faced with this terrible monster, the underlings had no choice but to follow him. This man met with Kraven's father, Nikolai, and he also felt sorry for the death of their boss. He promised to provide him with a sanctuary. In fact, Nikolai also wanted to recruit them. But before he could say a few words, he sensed something was wrong. Alexi's arranged assassins suddenly appeared. Fortunately, Nikolai was prepared, but his younger son was scared and hid, which disappointed Nikolai. He wanted his son to have some courage like a man, not to retreat like a turtle when facing danger. The news of the failure quickly reached Alexi. Although he was very angry, he was not surprised after all. Nikolai was not an ordinary person. At the same time, his subordinates brought a USB drive containing the video of Kraven's prison break. When he learned that the legendary hunter was Nikolai's son, Alexi was shocked. If the father and son reconciled, It would surely cause a bloodbath. He sent out a strange assassin, a man who also had extraordinary abilities. Any enemy who made eye contact with him would be instantly hypnotized. At this time, Kraven did not know that danger was approaching. To give his brother a surprise on his birthday, he climbed a skyscraper barehanded. After avoiding all of his father's eyes and ears, he finally saw his brother. It turned out that on the night he left home, his brother begged him to take him away, but Kraven refused. Over the years, his brother had often been scolded by his father, which made Kraven feel guilty towards him. Although his father often suppressed his self-esteem, his brother still yearned for his recognition deep down. However, Kraven had already seen through his father. He hoped that his brother would stay away from that so-called father, because he was a thorough villain. But before he could finish speaking, his father suddenly arrived. Kraven did not want to ruin his brother's birthday, so he had to force a smile. After the banquet, Kraven spent the night alone in the park. The next day, when he was about to say goodbye to his brother, he found the room in a mess and his brother missing, leaving only a bloodstain on the bedsheet. He immediately ran to the balcony and saw his brother being stuffed into a car. Kraven jumped down without hesitation. This height was a piece of cake for him, but he was still one step too late, and the kidnappers had already disappeared at the end of the road. However, Kraven did not give up. He burst into a beast-like speed and ran wildly. As the distance between the two sides gradually shortened, Kraven's muscles also swelled crazily. He charged at the car like a bull and then leaped onto it. He wanted to smash the car window to save his brother, but the kidnapper's car was too fast. Kraven had to dodge and was thrown out. They took Dmitri to the dock, but Kraven still did not give up. He tied the net to the fuselage at the last second before the plane took off. He stood firm and tried to stop the takeoff with brute force. Seeing the assassin taking out his weapon, he had to tie the net and quickly dodge the shooting. Then he picked up the steel pipe and leaped up. The machine gunner did not have time to react before he died. At this time, the plane also broke free from the restraints. Kraven flew up and grabbed it at the last second. He was dragged hundreds of meters on the sea surface and finally hit a buoy and was thrown out. He could only watch Dmitri being taken away. Kraven found Calypso again and wanted to find the kidnapper's base through her resources. Although Calypso agreed to help him, it would take some time. Kraven had to find his father, but he did not expect that Nikolai already knew about it. The kidnappers sent Dmitri's severed finger and asked for a ransom of $20 million. Although this amount of money was insignificant to his father, as the biggest underworld boss in New York, once he chose to surrender to the enemy, it would indirectly declare that his authority was trampled. Moreover, even if the kidnappers' demands were met, he did not believe that they would release the hostage. After weighing the pros and cons, he decided to ignore the kidnappers' demands. Kraven originally had a little fantasy, but at this moment it was completely shattered. Since his father decided to give up on this son, Kraven could only raid the kidnappers' base alone. The good news was that Calypso had made progress. Her friend had found out the kidnappers' base, but who would have thought that as soon as Calypso left, her friend would run into that strange man? It turned out that he had been bought a long time ago. However, the old man did not know that any party would show extreme disgust when dealing with traitors. The kidnapper's base was hidden on a cliff, but this was not a problem for Kraven. He stuck to the wall like a gecko and soon infiltrated the secret base. The patrolling guard had just exposed his body when he was pierced in the throat by a flying weapon. He moved like a ghost among the guards, and his light footsteps did not make any sound. Even if the kidnappers had a strong sixth sense, they still could not detect the presence of danger. However, even the strongest hunter would make mistakes, which also alerted the enemies in the depths, but they still overestimated their strength, and the gunfire stopped in a moment. The bearded man who was leading the way wanted to resist, but he was thrown out by Kraven. He was about to interrogate Dmitri's whereabouts when he sensed the danger approaching. The next second, a rocket bomb quickly approached. Kraven had no time to dodge. He fell into the valley with the kidnapper, and the explosion also caused a landslide. In order to find clues about Dmitri, he had to protect the other party with his body. Seeing the city wall being blown open again, Kraven had no time to dodge and was completely buried. Later, the assassin searched out Kraven's body and was about to take a photo and send it to the boss when he did not expect Kraven to appear behind him. The two assassins did not have time to react before they were dealt with by Kraven. On the other side, Dmitri was also brought to Alexei. However, he did not intend to kill him mercilessly but sympathized with his experience. He believed that Dmitri had been suffering from his father's coldness for many years, and their experiences were extremely similar. In order to persuade Dmitri, he also revealed his secret. It turned out that he had undergone extreme biological experiments, which turned him into what he is today. Although he had endless power, He also had to endure unbearable pain. Although the rhinoceros hated his current appearance, he understood a truth: only the strong would be respected. He wanted Dmitri to accept the transformation and use his strength to seize Nikolai's underworld empire. But at this moment, his subordinates suddenly reported that a mysterious person had broken in, and everyone took out their weapons. Unexpectedly, Kraven came so quickly. However, when the elevator door opened, he saw the strange man, and when he took off his glasses, everyone was drawn into the illusion. He moved like a ghost through the corridor and appeared directly in front of Dmitri. The strange man warned Alexi not to kill Dmitri before catching Kraven, because he found that the other party was so perfect that he had no weaknesses, and his biggest weakness was only this Dmitri. Then he took out a plant from his pocket, which was a rare species in Siberia. The poison arrows used by Kraven came from it. Now, as long as he found the location of this plant, he could successfully find Kraven. At the same time, Kraven was worried that Calypso would be in danger, so he took her to his hiding place in Siberia. Inside, there were a large number of experimental equipment and different herbs. It turned out that Kraven studied these plants in order to replicate the magical medicine that saved him that year. However, Calypso did not know that the formula had been lost after her grandmother's death. On the other side, the strange man and Alexi also arrived, and they also brought a terrible poison. Once injected into the body, it would awaken the most terrible side in the heart, and then the organs of the body would fail, and the person would die in the most terrible illusion. However, the group soon encountered trouble. The mountain forest seemed to hide a huge danger. Unexpectedly, a leopard suddenly rushed out and disappeared into the sea of forests in an instant. And Dmitri also escaped into the woods in the chaos. They sent out a team to find him, but they did not know that they had already walked into Kraven's trap. A carefully designed hunting operation began. He was like a ghost in the forest, and the killers did not even have a chance to fire before they died. The remaining few panicked, but it was too late to escape. Alexi also knew that those wastes were in danger. He sent out a helicopter for carpet bombing. However, Kraven had a significant speed advantage and easily dodged the incoming bombs. But just as he was about to return, he was suddenly hit by a poison arrow. Kraven instantly felt dizzy, and his body began to shake uncontrollably. Then a large number of spiders appeared in front of him. Kraven was brought into a terrible illusion. The strange man's voice echoed in his ears, trying to destroy his last will. Kraven could not distinguish between reality and illusion. He wanted to fight back, but his body became increasingly sluggish. Finally, he seized the opportunity to counterattack, but several punches in a row hit the wooden stake. Kraven's defenses were completely broken, and just as the strange man was about to finish him off, he was hit in the forehead by a flying sword that came out of nowhere. Calypso came at a critical moment. Looking at the dying Kraven, Calypso took out the mysterious potion again, and Kraven finally regained consciousness. On the other side, Alexi received feedback from the team. He thought Kraven was already dead and was about to return to the base with Dmitri, but he suddenly saw a terrible scene. A large number of wild buffalo were charging towards him. Alexi knew that no one could survive such an impact. He quietly disconnected the connected tube, and his body began to harden in just a few seconds. Human cars were like waste paper in front of wild buffalo. At this time, Kraven had also caught up. Alexi climbed onto the roof of the car and kicked him away. Kraven took the initiative and kicked him dozens of meters away with one foot. Seeing that the out-of-control car was about to hit him, Alexei did not dodge. The huge inertia also threw Kraven away. Seeing Alexei lifting the car again, Kraven did not retreat but advanced. He easily dodged with his agility and instantly came to the other party. However, no matter how he attacked, he could not hurt the other party at all. Instead, he was hit dozens of meters away by Alexei. In the heavy blows of flesh and blood, Kraven was also beaten into a sandbag. Alexi used his wild charge to hit Kraven with the truck and throw him away until he saw him being pressed under him. Alexi showed a cold smile. But then Kraven jumped out again and was caught by Alexi. In the face of absolute strength, Kraven had no chance of winning. Just as he was about to suffocate, he accidentally discovered the other party's weakness. Kraven used all his strength to stab in, and the pain made Alexi let go. But this also completely angered this beast. Kraven quickly pulled out the cable and, with his agile body, wrapped the steel cable around the other party. Then he threw it into the air with all his might. One end of the cable was tied to a wild buffalo. After the baptism of huge buffalo hooves, Alexi was already dying and no longer had the arrogance. But this was not the end. Kraven found his father again. It turned out that the video was sent to Alexi by his father. Faced with Kraven's questioning, his father did not intend to hide it. He had long known that the mysterious hunter was his own son, so he secretly contacted Alexi and used his feelings for Dmitri as bait to kill him with someone else's hand. Although Kraven was disappointed after hearing this, he would not kill his father with his own hands. But just as he left, the roar of a brown bear came from the forest. His father quickly picked up the hunting rifle but found that there were no bullets in it. As Kraven loosened his palm, the brown bear also attacked at the same time. A year later, he came to Dmitri's birthday party and found that the once weak Dmitri had completely taken over his father's business, which surprised Kraven. He did not want Dmitri to become a second father. After the birthday party, he wanted to talk to Dmitri again, but saw a scene he did not dare to believe. It turned out that he had long secretly participated in the doctor's experiment. Kraven could not believe that the once weak and timid Dmitri had secretly designed all of this, and even he was his pawn. And this cunning chameleon would soon stir up an unprecedented catastrophe.